This is Madia-as Digdigan Buenaflor, extending an invitation to each and every one of you everywhere, as my way of commemorating the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II. I will read and serialize my novel, The Blood of Three, starting on Tuesday, August 27, and continuing episodes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Follow the drama on my YouTube channel. May we forever exhale and inhale love and peace. Joybell was as white as paper. She could not stop shaking as she related to her father and mother the incident at the marketplace. It was only then that her nerves gave way, a case of delayed reaction, and the outburst of accumulated anxiety considering everything that transpired that day. What you did was admirable, Joybell. Saving the civilians took courage. You are a brave young girl. Mr. Mayor was proud and touched. Joybell saw the pride in her father's eyes, but she did not tell him everything, not about Ernesto being with the group. She could not tell him that she took the risk primarily because of him. Or could she have done that, what she did, if Ernesto was not there? She now wondered. Would her father still consider her courageous and be proud of her? Her father was a fair man, that she was sure. But yes, if the same happened in my presence, I would do it again. She reassured herself and felt better. However, the new arrivals of Japanese soldiers may be more hostile. Besides, they don't know you or our family. Mr. Miura was concerned. Please, child, stay away from the soldiers. Lota could not conceal her fear. Don't worry, they won't harm me. You always told me that if we treat people with respect and value who they are, then there's nothing to be concerned about. She reminded her parents about all of compassion and willingness to extend help where needed. She did all of this today. You did what you have to do, my child. He had to commend her. Yet something inside was nagging him and would not let go. But how could he now tell her otherwise, because this was wartime? The irony hit him. Would he make her change because of the war? No. He still adhered to his belief in the goodness of man, both in peace and in war. However, there was something he could still say. Please be careful. I will, Daddy. Joybell just now realized how her father wrestled with himself and ultimately decided that he was indeed her daughter's father. He had shown her respect. She felt suddenly so grown up. She was no longer a child. Captain Duran, Ernesto introduced himself and shook Dison's hand. Glad to meet you, sir. Dison executed a quick salute, which Ernesto acknowledged. Come, you better wash your face. Ernesto led the way to the spring. As they walked, Ernesto's curiosity was aroused. Why were you chased by that Jap? Oh, that. He must have suspected me. I was with some civilians from town. We were able to pass through the checkpoint. I thought I got through all right. I was alone by the narrow trail when I found myself being trailed by the Japanese. I had nothing except this. Dison showed a hunting knife. I ran when he ordered me to stop. It was a gamble, but it paid off. Dison drank from the spring. This is refreshing. He washed his face. Ernesto watched him closely and listened carefully to his every word. If he came from town, why did he not see him among the lineup of men? He should have noticed him. And why didn't the Japanese shoot him while they were still in the narrow trail? Why? So many questions. But he did not have the answers. Not yet, anyway. Of course, in any given situation, anything was possible. He witnessed how the Japanese pursued and shot at this man. Dison finished washing his face and left it with droplets of water sparkling against the sun. You should be more careful next time, Ernesto warned him. Where do you go from here? Nowhere. Our group had dispersed. We were outnumbered in our last encounter. Many in our unit got killed, including Captain Mendez. But luckily, I was able to escape. Yes, we heard of your unit. That was a horrible incident. It was a massacre, Dizon shook his head. I would like to get to headquarters and receive another assignment. I want to fight. I'm dying to have a chance to be in another encounter. His jaws tightened. Well then, come along. We need men with your spirit. Ernesto smiled as he walked ahead, followed by Dizon. The trail was long and arduous, but Dizon tried to remember their whereabouts and every detail along the way. When did you come to this place? Ernesto broke the silence as they walked into the thicket. Yesterday, yes, that's right. I got lost for a while. I heard of a group operating in this area, so I thought of joining it. The situation in Manila and the adjacent provinces is quite dangerous. Now that General MacArthur had returned, I don't want to be left out of action. I have to join a group. Well, I guess you are in the right place. We need more men, especially now. Is your headquarters from here? Yes, the Japanese haven't been successful in zeroing in on us. Again, they stayed quiet as they ascended the rising terrain, both of them going out of breath. The trail was winding and carved by the mountainside, the steep precipice below it. Ernesto intentionally took the more intricate route just to play safe. He observed that Dizon had stopped and was looking down. That's where the town is, Ernesto pointed to the far south. See that tower? It's the garrison. Yes, sir, I can see it. Their long trip continued. They descended into the damp path under the tall trees. The headquarters was not very far from there. Now and then they talked about the terrifying experiences Dizon had with the Japanese and the strength and capabilities of the enemies. But there was more silence as they continued. We're here, finally Ernesto announced as they reached the clearing. This is a good place, sir. It's far enough and not really accessible. He took a deep breath. Come, follow me. Dizon looked around, observing several guards posted at short intervals. Some were lookouts at the top of trees. Guerrillas stopped and saluted Ernesto as they passed them beside their makeshift huts. All over the clearing, Dizon saw the intensive training the men were undergoing. There were groups in hand combat drills, others shooting arrows. Many were working on arrows and knife production. Dizon was taking in everything very discreetly. That's the hut of Colonel Holt. I'll take you to him. Ernesto pointed to the one at the far end of the clearing. Thank you, sir. Dizon followed Ernesto, fired up inside, which showed in his determined long strides. This is it, he thought. Come in, came the answer to Ernesto's knock at the door. The voice was full and resonant. Ernesto pushed the door open and saluted as he stood in front of Colonel Holt's desk. The colonel was relieved to see him. I have someone with this, sir. He came from the company of Captain Mendez. Yes, I remember Captain Mendez, Colonel Holt murmured. Let him in. Ernesto peeped out of the door and summoned Dizon in. Come in, Lieutenant. Dizon walked in with his impressive military gait. He stopped beside Ernesto and executed a salute. Lieutenant Ronaldo Dizon reporting, sir. After acknowledging his salute, Colonel Holt straightened himself and clasped his hands on the table before him, looking up at Dizon from head to foot and back. How did you know about our place? Asked Colonel Holt. Captain Mendez had briefed us about the other guerrilla units operating in the nearby provinces, sir. When our group had that last encounter, the ambush, I was hoping to find a group around this area that I could join. How did you come to know Captain Duran? He saw me while I was being chased and shot at by the Japanese, sir. Colonel Holt threw Ernesto a look for confirmation. He used our password, sir, so I allowed him to come along. Your credentials, Lieutenant Dizon? I have them here, sir. Dison quickly reached from his right shoes and pulled out a small bundle of flattened papers. "My credentials, sir." He handed the papers to Colonel Hall and stood back at attention. The colonel carefully went through every paper, occasionally looking back at Dison. This did not alarm Dison in any way. He had been well briefed and prepared to answer any question about himself and the many encounters of their group. Finally, the colonel looked up at Dison, this time more relaxed. For the first time, he smiled at him. "All right, Colonel Dison, since your group was disbanded, you are welcome to join us. You will take your orders from Captain Duran." Colonel Holt handed back his papers. "Thank you, sir. Captain Duran, Lieutenant Dison will be under your command. Assign him his own team as soon as possible." "Yes, sir," Ernesto replied. "That's all." The colonel acknowledged their salute as they left the hut. He was pleased to have another officer in his group, for they were badly in need of good officers. He had heard many good things about Captain Mendez and his unit, their rigid discipline and daring operations. Lieutenant Dison gave a good indication of this from the way he conducted himself. He could be a great asset to their unit, the colonel thought. Ernesto walked out toward the clearing with Dison. He pointed out to Dison their guards, the mess area, and the guerrillas who camped all over the place. Ernesto went to a group of about 12 men, their ages ranging from 15 to 50, who stood at attention and saluted as Ernesto stopped before them. "Men, this is Lieutenant Dison from the company of Captain Mendez. He'll be with us." The men saluted him, then stepped forward and shook hands with him. From there, Ernesto took Dison to his hut. "You will stay with me, Lieutenant Dison." "Thank you, sir. I'm sure I'll like it here, sir." Dison had just sat down to relax when he heard the sound of a gong. "What's that, sir?" Dison was fast on his feet and looked out the window. He saw all the men hurrying toward one direction. He was sure it was not a raid, for the men did not show signs of alarm or panic. "Time for lunch. We eat quite late here, you know, about 2 in the afternoon. Come, you must be hungry." "I am." Smiling, Dison followed Ernesto to the mess area. One of the men handed Dison a half coconut shell, which served as his plate. He followed the men to the mess shed. "All right, come and get it. Food tastes good. Move on," rattled off Rudy, the mess boy, a young man of about 18, plump and with a goatee that hung down his chin. "You'll love this." He looked up at Dison, grinning as he slapped down one ladle of mongo bean soup with greens and 1 or 2 small dried fish. "You must be a new addition," Rudy commented. "You like mongo beans?" he joked upon seeing a hint of smirk in Dison. With his left hand, he put another ladle of cornmeal. "Corn's good for you. Move on," he sang as Dison sprightly walked to a nearby tree. Dison sat down beneath the tree and feasted heartily on his meal. He disliked the taste of mongo beans and dried fish, but he pretended to like this. He must show these guerrillas that he was one of them. He took extra care not to give any indication that he had been used to the savory and delectable food of the Japanese, especially the sweet-sour taste of their meals served him while he was training at the Japanese garrison. "How's the food, Lieutenant Dison?" Ernesto sat beside him. "Okay, sir, it's good." Dison made every effort to look genuinely pleased with the food. "It's a feast for a hungry man like me. This is what we lack here, food. We started eating corn instead of rice for several months now, and we have had nothing to go with it except dried fish or salted fish with sweet potato leaves and at times just salt. Sometimes we have only boiled cassava for breakfast and toasted corn for coffee or ginger tea drink." "The same problem we had with Captain Mendez, sir, but we managed to buy other necessities from the town, often disguised as farmers or old folks. I've been assigned to that job several times." "You're lucky. The Japanese in this town are very suspicious. I almost got trapped this morning. We also find the civilians too scared and hesitant to cooperate with us. The situation had become more tense." "Guess so, sir." We had received messages from Manila about the recent Japanese order of mass hoarding of civilians from the rural areas to the towns and cities, especially here in Luzon, for centralized control over the civilians, I suppose. But they just watch out and see when General MacArthur finally lands here, they will find no place to hide. Not here, the garrison had been the strongest so far. It's a hard nut to crack, Ernesto offered. I hope we could do something to neutralize the Japanese forces in the town. Dizon started to lead the conversation to the forces in town, which Ernesto noticed. But he smiled dryly and continued to eat his lunch. You seem not to like the food, Lieutenant Dizon. Dizon was jolted. He hurriedly gulped down the thin soup from his coconut shell. Oh no, sir, I love this very much. But he almost choked. This had not passed Ernesto's keen eyes. Come over here, Joe. Ernesto beckoned a young American who was about 20. The latter briskly worked toward them. His 6-foot belt had the casual and easy gait of a young boy, but one could sense that he was not only a bright young man, but one who had a street smart and fiery temperament. Hey, you have new company, Cap? He grinned as he threw Dizon a scrutinizing look. Joe was young, but quick and good in judging people. Lieutenant Dizon here. He just joined us, Lieutenant. This is Joe, Lieutenant Fern. He's our radio whiz, in charge of communications. Dizon was about to extend his right hand to Joe, but he was caught off guard by the casual greeting of the young American. Hi there, Lieutenant. Everything here comes in small quantities, so just make the best of it. He winked at Ernesto and gulped down the thin mango soup from his coconut shell. See you, Lieutenant, Captain. He waved at them and walked away. Does he really operate the radio? Dizon seemed doubtful. Oh yes, he does and very good at it. He has the talent and aptitude for everything electronics. Dizon was about to ask more about Joe as his mission involved communication, but before he could do so, someone interrupted. Captain Durant, Colonel Holt would like to see you. The messenger addressed Ernesto. Thank you, Ernesto stowed. I'll see you later, Lieutenant Dizon. Enjoy your meal. Ernesto walked to Colonel Holt's hut, and Dizon became uneasy. He thought something must be wrong. An important message, perhaps, or did they have doubts about him? He could not just sit there and pretend to like the food. He must know what was happening. But then the guerrillas could readily suspect him if he moved around too much this zone. A little more patience, he told himself. How's Lieutenant Dizon? The colonel did not waste time as soon as Ernesto had settled down. I can't say much, sir. He seems all right. I don't see any reason why we should not take him in. He appears well informed about Captain Mendez's group. Maybe, sir. You have any misgivings? Oh, no, sir. As a matter of fact, it's best to make sure. The colonel leaned back on his chair. We have to make sure that who we trust, especially during this critical time. It must have been an impulsive decision on my part in inviting him to come along, sir. Must have been our need for men. It is only now that Ernesto realized what he had done. He should have been more careful. Now he must really make sure that Dizon was on the level. Don't let this bother, Captain. Your intention is good. I trust your judgment. Thank you, sir. Well, Captain, how was your trip to town? There was a roundup of male civilians today at the marketplace. I was one of them. A Filipino spy had tipped the Japanese. The Japanese must be getting very nervous. So, how did you get away? My friend Joybell, that's her name, votes for all of us being civilians coming to town to barter our crops and goods. And the Japanese bought it? She was very believable. Even the Japanese children, apparently her friends, all stood up behind her. She took a big risk there. But what Ernesto did not say was his concern over Sergeant Mamoto's obvious interest in her. She is one courageous young girl. The colonel was impressed. I don't know, sir. I'd call it naivety. And courage, too. Her belief in the goodness of people concerns me. She doesn't seem to realize that we are at war. Well, maybe she has a way with the Japanese that gave her confidence to deal with them, which means that her father must have some clout in that garrison. From my memory of your father before the war, he is a peace-loving person. But that was before the war. You know how war could affect people's beliefs. I don't think so, Colonel. A previous talk with her father assured me that war had just intensified his belief. He is still the same man of peace. He doesn't believe in this war. Whatever the position of the family with the Japanese, save you from disaster. Not any of us could safely walk into town anymore with this recent development of alertness in the part of the Japanese. I noticed the arrival of truckloads of soldiers. Apparently, they are solidifying their forces in the town. That has to be expected. We can't be naive to think that they are not preparing for General MacArthur's imminent landing in Luzon. We are not naive either to think that we won't infiltrate the town to gather intelligence on them, and that's exactly why utmost care should be taken. Ernesto was silent. His thought went back to Joybell. You must be tired, Captain. I guess that will be all for now. As Ernesto stood up to leave, a soldier came in, helping another with bloody face. Sir, Lucas is back, the soldier reported. Sir, we were caught by the Japanese. A hooded spy recognized Bert. Out of breath, Lucas explained. And where is he? He's dead, sir. They hanged him. The spy was about to point at me when the boy stabbed him. The commotion that followed enabled me to escape. I didn't know you were in town, Ernesto said in disbelief. He had not seen all of the men who were rounded up, but of course he did not even lift his face to avoid calling attention to himself. I made them follow you for cover, the colonel answered. But how did it happen? Ernesto was curious. Bert and I saw how the American girl saved you and the rest of the civilians, Lucas answered. You did? The colonel was impressed. And they killed Bert. Ernesto bowed his head sadly. But how did this happen? I didn't hear about it. As soon as you left with the American girl, sir, all the male civilians were rounded up again, even before we could get far. Ernesto remembered a group of Japanese soldiers coming toward the hill. They must have been looking for him. That same afternoon back in town, the rumor spread fast of the massacre of prisoners in the concentration camp in the adjacent province, mostly Americans who were imprisoned at the outbreak of the war. It came about as a retaliation of the Japanese for the guerrillas' ambush of the reinforcement. The condition had been tense the entire day, as Japanese soldiers in large groups deployed around the town. Joybell and Lota were eagerly waiting for Mr. Miura, who went to the garrison for the leftover food. They waited for hours until it was already past their dinner time. Lota and Joybell had already finished their vesper prayers, a thing we had never done without Mr. Miura. Lota became more anxious when the children came wondering why they were not visited. They looked hungry. The small boy collapsed not just from hunger but from beriberi as well. He looked pale, yellowish, and bloated. When Lota pressed his leg, the flesh sank deep and remained dented as he released the pressure. She gave him one raw egg to take, although she knew that she had to stretch the remaining eggs to 1 week, the eggs she had bartered that morning, half of which she had already shared earlier with a sick neighbor. After letting each child sip a couple of more ladles of chicken soup, which she had prepared for their supper, she asked them to go home. Mommy, why is Daddy not home yet? That's all for today, to be continued on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I hope you will inspire me with a like, share, and subscribe.